Hey there, Mid-Michigan. I'm Chief Meteorologist Erik Kostrzewa here with an update, or just more so bringing a lot of this new information to your attention here on Beyond the Forecast. We're going to talk all about the geomagnetic storm watch, what that means for our aurora chances, and what that could mean just for the infrastructure here on the Earth, because this is very rare that we see a geomagnetic storm of this magnitude of G4 actually occurring here in the not only the United States but across the world. So I'm going to let a few more people trickle on in here before we get started. But if you are watching right now and you can hear me clearly, we did see that watch issued today by NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association. But more importantly, their space division, which usually gives us those aurora forecasts that we see periodically. Now, the last time we had a G4 storm was actually back in March, but the aurora was pointed at Europe, out towards Asia, the European continent, that area, that region of the world, while we were, of course, in daylight at that point in time. So we didn't see anything when it came to the aurora with regards to that. But this is the first G4 geomagnetic storm watch that has been issued since 2005. So it's been a while since we've had a watch where they can clearly see that this storm is strong, it is progressing towards the Earth, and we have at least a way to warn people about it, give people some time, if they wanted to see the aurora, an opportunity to do so. Now, when it comes to a G4 storm and the watch that we have in place right now, we are going to see several of these coronal mass ejections, which is the particles, the energy coming out of a sunspot, and is directed towards the Earth. It's the particle, the energy that is needed to lead to the formation of the aurora. That is pointed directly at the Earth, and there will be several of these waves that will be merging and arriving on the Earth or at the Earth here late on Friday night or late Friday into early Saturday. So Friday night, Saturday morning is that time frame we are going to be watching for the strongest portion of this storm and the most likely occurrence of the aurora, which could be visible all the way down to Alabama, maybe even Northern California, which would give us a very high likelihood that we would potentially see the aurora not only here, but maybe just directly overhead the entire state of Michigan. But what we have going right now, if it is a little bit weaker here with the aurora, it would still likely be overhead for the far northern communities, the Upper Peninsula, northern lower Michigan. I'm basing this off of a K7, which would be a G3. Now, if it is G4, that would be K8, and I'll show you what would happen at that point in time. I'm going to edit this and drag it down a little bit further because as the storm strengthens, so does the opportunity of aurora a little bit further to the south. So if we did see it as more of a K8, lower on the horizon, as far south as northern Alabama, northern California, into Oregon, Kentucky, Tennessee, but it would be directly overhead for us. So a G4 would mean a very good opportunity at seeing the aurora pretty much across the entire lower peninsula of Michigan, even all the way down into far southern Michigan, including Detroit. Now, what also comes with these geomagnetic storms is the potential to have some effects on the overall infrastructure we have here on Earth and even the satellites that are up in space. So it goes from G1 to G5. Usually when we see a G2, G3, that gives us a good opportunity to see the aurora. It would be an exceptional opportunity to see the aurora here if we got a G4. Now, as of right now, it doesn't look like it would be a G5, but if it ends up being a G5, that could be pretty impactful to the entire Earth. As you can see, G5s, potential blackouts, or very severe impacts to the power grids because of all the energy that is coming from the sun. And we would have issues with navigation systems. Aurora would be all the way down to Florida and southern Texas. But as of right now, we're looking at a G-form storm, which would mean there could be some possible impacts to the overall power grid. We could see some power outages if it is as severe as could potentially happen. That's why we do have that watch. But navigation satellites, radio frequencies would be impacted. And of course, you would see that aurora all the way down to Alabama, Northern California, like I had mentioned. Now, the most important thing is Mother Nature going to allow for us to see the aurora? As of right now, it looks as though from sunset to 2 a.m., which is going to be in that ballpark for when the best or most significant portion of this storm will be impacting the Earth, which would lead to the aurora. Now, the best time frame would be 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. as of right now. That could shift, that could change as we go into tomorrow. But as of right now, current forecast, current indications have it between 11 p.m. 2 a.m. But anytime from sunrise to sunset or sunset to sunrise, switch those. But when it gets dark enough, you'll have to look up to the north, look over up, look a little bit up and off to the north. And you may have your chance of seeing the aurora. It would be overhead for all of us if it is a G4 storm. But again, those clouds could ruin our chances, or at least put a damper on some of the pictures, views, things like that of the aurora, which I'll show you right now in Futurecast when and I'm going to go back. I'm going to start this over just so you guys can get an idea we're going to go sunset to sunrise. So right around 9:30, we do have some pretty clear conditions. Now, the sun will be setting at this time, so there will still be some light pollution from the sun. And that's also another important thing. Get away from those major cities. Get away from any light pollution if you want to have your best chance of seeing the aurora. We are going to potentially see some of those clouds moving in from the west at 11 p.m. This is when that time frame for the best conditions would be starting. So from about Interstate 75 and points east, best viewing conditions here, which will linger over the next several hours. We will see by about 12:30, 1 o'clock, Flint to Sandusky, Bad Axe, still seeing some decent sky cover, but then clouds really start to increase with some rain showers as we look towards about 1 a.m., closer to US 127 and along and west of Interstate 75. And then we're all locked into the clouds by 3 a.m., some rain showers out there. Not going to be good viewing conditions once we get to about 2, 3 o'clock. Now, how do auroras, or the aurora borealis, northern lights, whatever you call it, how does it form? So we have a magnetic field because of the poles that we have on the Earth. So we have a magnetic field that's pointed towards the sun. When you get the solar wind, which is charged particles, electrons that are emitted from those sunspots on the sun and are directed towards the Earth, the particles are going to follow that magnetic field. So they're going to go poleward. So not only at the South Pole, but also the North Pole, they're kind of redirected around that magnetic field. And of course, where it is weakest right at the poles, it is going to enter the Earth's atmosphere and cause the aurora borealis as the electrons collide with molecules in the atmosphere. You get some of the colors based on the different molecules, different oxygen, nitrogen molecules, depending on where they are interacting with things. So above 200 kilometers, when it interacts there in the atmosphere, you get the red colors with the oxygen molecules. 100 to 2 kilometers up, 200 kilometers up with the nitrogen molecules. That's where you get some of the blue aurora, then the green aurora with the oxygen molecules at about 100 to 200 kilometers up in the atmosphere. And then below 100 kilometers with the nitrogen molecules, you get some of the pink aurora. Now, we all typically see the green aurora. That's what, a lot of the pictures usually have in them. You get the green auroras, and then you get a little bit of the blue, red, and pink at times. So what usually happens is the oxygen molecules interact with the atmosphere, or the particles interact with the oxygen molecules in the atmosphere about 100 to 200 kilometers up. Now, we could see all of the colors with how strong the geomagnetic storm could potentially be out there on Friday night. So time will tell if we're able to actually see it. So as of right now, I'll put this back up, give you a better idea, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about just how rare this is. But sunset to sunrise, Friday night, anytime sunset to sunrise, if you can go out and get a good view, look off to the north, away from light pollution. More so, look on the horizon first, but you'll notice if it's a little bit more overhead. But the best time frame will be 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. That's when we'll also have some decent sky cover. We'll be partly cloudy at that point, and then we'll go into overcast skies after 2 a.m. So 11 p.m., 2 a.m. may fit right in with some of our best sky conditions with the cloud cover, but we'll see if that speeds up, slows down as we go into tomorrow and whether or not the worst of the storm will impact us as we get into Friday night. Could be a little bit delayed, could be delayed into Saturday. And then, those that are at nightfall, which would be on the other side of the earth, may get the best aurora while we are left without seeing anything. So we'll see if that happens. I'm going to get rid of my graphics and I'm going to add another piece of information to the stage. So what we are seeing with this geomagnetic storm, as I mentioned, is pretty rare. I just need to make sure I can get to this page if it allows me to. So what we are seeing with this is, again, this is the first G4 watch since 2005. Now, we've had a G4 a couple of times since then, but the overall expectation was that it was going to be more of a G3, and it actually, became something stronger. So they didn't put a watch out. But because they have a watch out, it means that we might even see a G5 with this storm. So a G4 watch means that, we are, or at least do have the expectation that a G4 storm, which would be severe, would occur here on Earth, with the possibility that it is a little bit weaker as a G3, or maybe even a little bit stronger as a G5. So we'll see what ends up happening, but we've had at least 5 Earth-directed coronal mass ejections, which are the energy of the particles that come out of the sun from the sunspots directed right at the Earth, and are expected to arrive as early as midday Friday, May 10th, and persist through Sunday, May 12th. So we may even see the chance of aurora Saturday night as well, but overall conditions, cloud cover-wise, may not necessarily be as conducive. Now, several strong flares have been observed over the past couple of days with the sunspot cluster, which is region 3664. That's a little bit. There are different sunspots, and the National Oceanic Atmospheric Association gives them different classifications, gives them different numbers. But the one that was pointed at us was 3664, which is 16 times the diameter of Earth. So imagine Earth, and this thing is 16 times larger than it, just the overall sunspot that's on there. So there's a lot of energy coming out of that when we see those solar flares and the sunspots ejecting those particles, as we talk about with the coronal mass ejection. Now, only 3 severe storms have been observed since December 2019 in this solar cycle, which has been a solar maximum. Now, we'll see the solar maximum continuing through 2025, and then we'll see that actually starting to wane. So if you don't see the aurora this time, there will be likely several more chances this year and next year to see the aurora borealis. But the last time we saw a G4 was, again, that March 23rd, 2024. So just a couple months back. Now, that occurred when we were during the day, when we were at daylight, so we didn't see anything because, of course, you need the darkness and nighttime to see the aurora borealis. But last time we had a G5 extreme, and the reason they're mentioning this is because it could end up being a little bit stronger than a G4. We will see. It's most likely going to be a G3, G4, but we'll see. It could end up being stronger, which would be a G5. That would be the extreme, and that would be the Halloween storms in October of 2003. And that G5 resulted in power outages in Sweden and also damaged some power infrastructure all the way down to South Africa. So as we were mentioning, there could be some widespread impacts with a G5 and even some possible impacts with a G4 storm. So kind of wrapping a bow on what we were talking about. The possibility of the aurora is there tomorrow night. We will likely see the best sky conditions of the overnight period from sunset to sunrise happening early on, from about sunset to 2 a.m., and then we'll all get into the overcast sky. So that would be the time frame that I would recommend going out trying to see it. Now, we'll have further updates as we get into tomorrow. They'll have a better idea of how quickly this coronal mass ejection is traveling. Could be here a little bit later, but as of right now, current forecast has it right in that sweet spot of the overnight period Friday, and right in that time frame of 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. So we will see if that changes, if that shifts around. Of course, we'll let you know, but aurora could potentially be just directly overhead for all of us. as we go into our Friday night and especially that time period. So we will watch very closely. But this is the first time that the Space Weather Prediction Center from the National Oceanic and Space Administration has issued a G4 watch since 2005. And of course, we'll see if it ends up being as strong as currently predicted. If it is, we would see aurora likely here. If it's a G5, of course, that would give us a very high chance of aurora. If it's G3, it would probably be more on the horizon for our southern communities and more overhead as you go further to the north. So we will keep a very close eye on this as we go along. Let me see if I can. So what we're watching there in the middle is the sun, and you can see all of those pushes of particles out. Those are the coronal mass ejections. I was trying to see if maybe we could see the one that it ended up shooting our way, but it doesn't look like that is here. But overall, there's a lot of data on this website. You can go to swpc.noaa.gov if you wanted to read more up on this. But overall, we are very much expecting a decent geomagnetic storm. And that could bring our best chance of aurora so far this year and maybe so far over the past couple of years. If you remember last year in March, we had some pretty nice aurora that happened in Huron County, but also into Bay City, right around the Saginaw Bay. And that was a G3. So when we go up to a G4, could be directly overhead rather than just on the horizon. And it could be directly overhead for all of us. So we will be watching this very closely. I would say the chance of this happening is about a 50% chance right now. It's a coin flip. So whether you like heads or tails, flip a coin. If you guess it right, maybe the chances will be in our favor as we get into Friday night. But overall, best time frame will be 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. If that changes, we'll let you know tomorrow. But as of right now, not going to get another update to this until Friday morning, at least at the earliest. So we'll keep you updated. As of right now, I want to show this one last time, and then we'll wrap things up. We have that geomagnetic storm watch for May 11th. That would be Friday night into Saturday morning. And it is a G4 geomagnetic storm watch, which would likely lead to some very significant aurora, but also could lead to some potential power outages, infrastructure impacts, satellites can be impacted, and also the potential, when we talk about, so this was one little tidbit that just came to mind with that 2003 storm that we mentioned a little bit earlier, the Halloween 2003, half of the satellites in orbit at that point in time were impacted by that storm. Now imagine if we said half of the satellites are not working as they usually do because of a geomagnetic storm. If we see a G5, that would happen, as we get into our Friday night and Saturday morning. So we will keep a very close eye on this. Of course, the aurora is an exciting thing, and if we can just kind of go out in our backyard and see it directly overhead, that would be even more amazing. But we will see if it ends up being a G4. If it does, that would give us a really good shot at seeing the aurora. If it's a little bit weaker, still could have that chance. If it's a little bit stronger, that's when we could start to have some issues with the infrastructure, the power grid, and also, just the overall opportunity at seeing the aurora. So that's going to do it for me. I'll leave this up for a little bit longer, and then we will end this live.